So we've got 5 minutes and 40 seconds. So
5 minutes.
5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah.
So because none of the mics are being picked up at the moment, I can talk. Nothing's going out.
Sure.
Let me
Right.
just
So
double
1
check.
minute beforehand, I'll
Let me just
give you
double
a
check
warning.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear you. 1 second. Just 1 second. Yeah, man, you just get up and let me just check what the young man's done here. Has he? The reason why I can't hear you. Oh, right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear
I
you.
can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Assalamu alaikum, sister. Can you hear me?
Yeah, walaikum salam. I can hear you.
Okay. Now, whatever you're talking about now will actually get transmitted soon. That's okay. Let's put it this way. You didn't have the slider up, my dear man. You scare me.
no, I lifted the number.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Ramadan Mubarak, inshallah, to everyone. May Allah accept our prayers and fasting. My name is Minna, and I'm going to be your host today for the program called Rise and Organize. I hope you find it really helpful and useful throughout this blessed month of Ramadan. If I tell you a bit about the program, and then I could move on and tell you a bit about where I'm working and also a bit about myself. And then the second half will be taking your calls and your WhatsApp messages. So we will be getting calls on 01902 972 150. WhatsApp messages, please keep them in English, 0744 042 0432. And then the last bit of the program will be, I'll be joined by a colleague of mine over the phone, and we will have a discussion about our topic today. So without going any further, I would like to first tell you a bit about myself and then where I'm working. So as I said, my name is Minna. I'm originally from Sudan. I came to this country in 2012 as an asylum seeker from my home country. And I lived in this country ever since. And I've raised a family here, working and contributing to the society ever since. I've been throughout the asylum system for 8 years before I got my leave to remain to stay in this country. And if you know people who have migrated to this country, or if you yourself been going through this, you know how the hostile environment has like an effect on you because you're basically not allowed to do anything while you're waiting for your asylum claim. This will be really beneficial because we're going to talk a bit about the work I'm doing. So keep that in mind. I work with an organization called Citizens UK, and it's an organization, a grassroots organization that bring communities, organizations together to fight for justice for people. And this is, again, we're going to talk a bit about it. But what is this show is all about? So this show, from my humble opinion, is for people who are angry about the way things are and want to do something about it. This show is for people who are frustrated with the system or worried about the direction the country is going in. This is for people who are this is for people who are upset about a particular issue or want a greater say in the changes happening in their neighborhood. You've posted your opinions on social media, you've shouted at something, you've been on the marches and protests, you've seen this on the news, but nothing have changed. This show is not going to tell you what you ought to care about or make the case for any particular policy or politician. I have my values and it will show throughout the show, but this show is about how you can make a difference to the things that you believe in. It offers a tried and tested method and set of practical tools and principles to show how people can get together and make change happen. It is not about the political system and how it works and how other people govern on our behalf. It's about how people themselves can challenge the system and influence decision making, whichever politicians are in power. The starting point for this show today, and today we'll be talking about justice and power in Islam and the concept of the Ummah from my perspective, but also from the work I'm doing already in Wolverhampton and in the West Midlands in general. The starting point, and I will throw this argument, and I would really like you to get in touch and tell me more about it. Tell me if you disagree with me, but I also want to know about your own take onto this. My starting point will be, if you want change, you need power. And you build up this power throughout relationships with other people around common interest. You break down the big problems you face together into specific issues and identify how the decision makers are and who has the power to make the changes you need. And today we'll be talking about just that, about how the concept of power from an Islamic perspective, but also what do we mean by power from the work I'm doing. And I know it's kind of a problematic term and people can take it in different ways. But hopefully, inshallah, after this episode, you will look at it from a different perspective. And I would like also to hear about it throughout the Thursdays that we will spend together, inshallah, during Ramadan. So, as I said, I work with an organization called Citizens UK, and Citizens UK bring communities and neighborhoods together to fight for justice for people who are living in these communities. And we use what I've just talked about, the tested method called community organizing, which is, again, bringing those people together to make real change and fight for, whatever that concerns a certain neighborhood or a certain city or a certain region. It could be and this is again, I'll speak a bit more about stories and tell more stories about people who have used that method and managed to get some changes in their communities and in their lives. What we do is we build the power throughout listening to people's experiences and stories of accessing, like basically how they can live in this country in a way that makes them, not subjected to all of the like poverty, or like it could be how can we help. So it's basically looking at the main source of the problem rather than putting a plaster on a temporary or doing a temporary solution to something that it could actually be resolved now but not in the long term. Again, we will unpack this throughout today's episode, but I want to share a bit about the work I'm doing. So I am working with the migrant and refugee organising team at Citizens UK. I am the West Midlands organiser, so I cover kind of a large region of the West Midlands. I work closely with my colleagues in Birmingham, in the Birmingham Citizen chapter. And what we've been doing throughout the last year or so is that we've been doing listening around people's experiencing making this country their home. So we've been listening to people talking about what does it feel for them to have an insecure status in the immigration system, whether it's being an asylum seeker or an undocumented migrant, or it could be somebody with no recourse to public fund condition on their visas. And we listen to those stories, come up with a strategy of how we can win some changes in the immigration system. And at the moment, we're working on a campaign called Making the Pathway to Citizenship Timely, Affordable and Fair. And this is at the back of listening to so many communities across the country about how making the UK means to them. And I will again share more stories about this in the program. I want to just talk a little bit more about how we're doing listening is it could be through one-to-one conversations with people, but also it could be through what we call them house meetings, which is basically bringing people together in a place of worship or a school or a university and get to have round questions and get people to talk and share about their stories. And this is something I also want to leave you with, inshallah, is that what could you do in your community to listen to the people who are living alongside you? And how can you make sure that those people are actually being listened to, but also be part of the solution and be part of the plan to solve this or to win the changes. I am going to read you a story of a I'm reading, by the way, from a book called How to Resist by the CEO of Citizens UK, and his name is Matthew Bolton. And this is a story that I really, it kind of touches me on a personal level, but also the idea that this is, the word is a tested method that actually worked, and it didn't just work for an elite or or a politician. It actually worked for a person that maybe me and you can meet on a regular basis or on a daily basis. So the story is of Abdul Durant. So you probably don't know about Abdul Durant. Abdul Durant is a black British Muslim man who worked nights as a cleaner at HSBC headquarters in Canary Wharf. So he was he's working in at the center of global capital of the capital in London, full of skyscrapers and jewelry shops. And this is Abdul, a cleaner there at the bank. Abdul was one of thousands of workers on the minimum wage in insurance employment. Every night, he cleaned the offices of Sir John Bond, who earned $2 million a year as chairman of the bank. At the annual general meeting of the bank in 2003, Abdul came not as a cleaner, but as a shareholder, having connected with others to buy shares and legitimate access to the company's annual moment of public accountability. He stood up in front of all the investors and executives, nervous as anything, and said, "Sir John, we work in the same office, but we live in different worlds. Let me tell you what it's like to work on £4.50 per hour, £4.50 per hour, and bring up 6 children. HSBC and also neighbouring other banks like Barclays have increased the pay for its cleaner, but it was turning a point in the UK living wage campaign, which has lifted hundreds of thousands of people out of working poverty and changed the government's approach to the minimum wage." So this is just a snapshot of the story of Abdul, who stood up to the chairman of the bank and said that I earned this and you're living on a $2 million a year. And this is basically not because Abdul was just woke up one day and said, I want to lead this, or I want to. Abdul was one of the leaders or the people we worked with and developed their leadership skills to be at that point where they can actually talk to the chairman of the bank and say, I deserve to earn more. And this is what community organizing in a more of a nutshell is. How can we develop the leadership of local people, everyday people who are, again, we're meeting on a regular basis, and how can we make them hungry for power and hungry for change, rather than just accepting and assuming that everything is happening to us is something that we can't change, basically. The whole idea of the whole thing of about community organizing is that we want to build a healthy and democratic society where everybody is actually interacting with politicians, but also in making changes in their neighborhoods, and rather than democracies ending at the ballot box, it actually starts there. And I could also argue that it actually starts before that, when you actually hold those politicians accountable about the things they say. We also have a say in community organizing that if you're not at the table, you're probably at the menu. So how can we make sure that people like myself and you can be actually there when decisions are made on our behalf? So, and how are we going to do this? Is by building power. And the power we're interested in is not the power, or like the power over, or the dominant power. And I think this is most of the people think about it when they hear when they first hear the word power. But it's more about the power with, and that's the relation of power we're seeking. And and those kind of power are power where we listen to each other concerns, and and all of the kind of things that they're going throughout their daily basis, and how can we amplify this, and how can we make sure that this is not just me talking to you and that's the end of that conversation, but also how are we going to bring more people into this, and how can we get more people into action, and how can they actually take this to the next level. The next level could be meeting your head teacher at your school, or it could be the vice chancellor in a university, or it could be the chairman of where you're working, or it could be your MP, or it could be the prime minister. So it depends on what is your problem and how you break it down, and also who's going to be with you. You can't do it your own. You can't do it by yourself. And this is, I think, how I interpret the concept of ummah. To me, is the ummah is there is the saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where I'm trying to translate the hadith really quickly in my head, but if there is the hadith that the ummah is like a one body, if one limb is the word, if one limb is suffering from something, or if the one limb is broken, then the whole body will then go into fever and will not sleep, because to heal that one piece of the body. And this is, I think, it summarizes the concept of the ummah. And if in your neighborhood there are people who are going through hardship because of their immigration status, or because of their no recourse to public fund condition on their visa, which means that they are more likely to go into destitution and poverty, and you're sitting there saying, what can I do to those people, and how can I help? The help is we could still provide some, not long lasting, I'll call it, maybe not long lasting changes to their lives, but there is a way that we could come together and say, okay, this has to stop, because more and more people are going through this in our neighborhoods, and going through this in our communities, that they're invisible to us and we might not know about it. These listening sessions we held in community centers and faith organizations, and pretty much anywhere where there are people coming together, is the space where people can actually share those pain and get like a way and a plan to how we can change it. So before we go into the break, I really want to share one story about how a group of people came together and thought about, okay, there's a problem in our community that we want to solve, and planned, put a strategy together, and won a change for thousands of people now across the country. So it's the free school meal campaign, and if I just give you a really quick overview of what that means. So children who are in England, if their parents are on a no recourse to public fund, or their parents or any other immigration status that prevents the family from accessing benefits, will mean that children in schools will not receive a free school meal. So basically, your child, if you're on no recourse public fund, and your child go to a state school in England, they will be refused to get a free school meal. So that was the problem. So this is people across people like in this is what we've been hearing in Citizens UK, and then Citizens UK have been got involved with this campaign in 2019, and this is like and held a lot of like big listening around NRPF and free school meals across the London Citizens chapters and institutions who are part of that chapter. And all of this have come across to like all of this listening and all of this pain that have been shared by parents, that they talk about how this is, of course, affecting their children, to be basically discriminated against and being secluded from accessing a free school meal. All this has been with the help of University College London. They have decided to engage with the Department of Education to get this to their like to shed more light on this. More organizations got involved, and this is what I mean by power and building power, is that more organization got involved, like the Lucian Refugee and Migrant Network, St. Mary's Primary School, and others who got involved in this campaign. We've also like maybe heard or this have been broadcasted through the Marcus Ratchford campaign, also like to end poverty for children. So the work continued. There was like a cross-party parliamentary briefing at one of the schools that we work in on this campaign. And after this like planning, negotiating, and also more listening from people who are going through this, in March 2022, the government announced that they've put a change onto this, and now all children across England are entitled to a free school meal. And that only happened because some angry parents came together and said, this has to stop and this has to change. And this is, of course, not just that, but also schools, as well as like accessing those free meals. Schools can also receive a more accurate pupil premium on those children, which is funding to improve education outcomes for disadvantaged pupils in schools in England. So not only that, it also benefited the children, but also schools get more funding because of that. So this is just one campaign that, among many, that have been won because people were angry about something, came together, listened to each other, and then thought about, okay, what change can we get? And this is the heart of, this is exactly what we mean by we want to build power to get the changes we need. I want you to, the next half, we will take some calls, so please keep them coming. WhatsApp messages to just talk about what does the word power means to you. And then I'll share more reflections about the power from a scriptural perspective. And then we'll have my colleague joining us at 12:30. But I just want you I want you to take this away with you, is that while you're having your iftar today, whether it's like an iftar in a school or a university, or it's like, having it in a mosque or just with your household, think about what are the things that putting pressure on them and putting pressure on you, and maybe start a discussion about how we can bring change, how you can actually start listening to your household, and then get maybe a plan to change this. I'll see you or you'll hear me in 6 minutes. welcome back, everybody. So today's show, we're talking about power. We're talking about power from a Islamic perspective, and how are you feeling about the word power. I gave a bit of like what is power in terms of the power that we're interested in to win some changes in our communities. So I've got some reflections on what the word power means to me, but I also want to hear yours. So please call in Ramadan Radio Wolves on 01902972150. I'm happy to accept calls in English or Arabic if you're more comfortable with Arabic. And please WhatsApp text in English 07440420432. So the power to me, as somebody who is Muslim living in the UK, and also have like my own legacy from the word power coming from my home country in Sudan. If you asked me about power 4 years ago, I would say corrupt, dominant, dictatorship, destruction. I might also use that word. But after of like not joining Citizens UK, but also thinking about how can I apply power to where I am in living in Wolverhampton, working, with people who are going through the immigration system, it kind of changed my perspective or changed my way of how I look into the word power. I'm now actually, I can call myself somebody who's hungry for power. Somebody who really wants to, not just change the people's life, also my life, because I'm still going through the immigration system. So, and I know for a fact that the only way, if I want to bring changes, is to my situation, is to build more power, to get more people, more organization on board of what we're trying to do, and engage with our politicians in a respectful manner, as a working condition, as a working relationship with our MPs, with our councillors, with our, people who we've elected to basically make decisions about our lives. And when I was thinking about power just yesterday, I think it was just before Asr prayer, and my phone was on, so the adhan kind of was recited, and the adhan of course says Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, which means come to your prayer, come to the salah, come to the falah. This is the word that I want to use. So falah, to me, when I've heard it, I was like, okay, that's basically the call to prayer, asking me to go to work and work to make, as pretty much equal to salah. And again, if you have different intake into this, please do share them. And to me, that was the call for action. Okay, that was for me. You do your salah, but you also do your action, do your falah. And falah could be in your school, in your community, in your mosque, in the place where you work, and and this is, to me, came up, was really relating to the word power, and how I am with my work, whatever I'm doing. My ultimate goal is that I want to fulfill that call to falah by making, I don't know, not just the lives of people better in this country, but also how can I call those people to do more falah with me, basically. And this is, to me, that was like a really spiritual intake to that word, that problematic world. I totally get it, and I know people might feel that why do we need to do this? We can just go out and shout about it, about the problems we've got. My response will be good luck in doing that. The biggest ever protest in British history was in 2003 against the Iraq occupation, or the British kind of going to Iraq. More than 1.5 million, if I remember correctly, marched throughout the streets of London to say, no, we don't want to send troops to Iraq. And what happened after this? British troops were sent to Iraq. So to me that was, yes, we've got numbers. We can feel really good about going out and shouting and protesting. But once I go back home, decision will be made without me. Decision will be made without us, because we were never invited in that room in the first place. And yeah, pretty much it was a good day. It didn't rain, but did we actually achieve change? Was our energy and our time well spent? I'll leave that to you to decide. I've been to many marches and protests throughout my years in the UK, and I can't remember if any led to any change. But I've been to what we call them actions, which means that, again, gathering of people who can then put pressure on our politicians, but pressure on the people who are making decision by working with them, bringing those stories to the front line, get them to think about their constituents and think about the things that they're going through. And that actually led to something. So to me, I will spend more time in these rooms rather than on the streets. So this is how I kind of perceive the word power. And I was also reflecting on a hadith by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And maybe I'm trying also to translate while I've got the hadith in my mind. But you probably know about this hadith. من رأى منكرا فليغيره بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. Whoever seen a munkar, and a munkar could be a wrong thing that is happening in front of you, or something that you know that is will lead to something bad happening. I want to choose my words correctly, because the Arabic language is it's quite different from how you translate it in English, so I want to get the right term correct. So if you see that munkar, if you see that wrong thing happening in front of you, do something with your hand. If you can't, then with your tongue. And if you can't, then with your heart. And that's the weakest of Iman. And reflecting on why is the weakest of Iman, again, I'm not providing any kind of religious teaching on this, but this is my own interpretation of the hadith, is that when I go out and I shout and I protest, it could bring some that kind of euphoria after that. I'm really excited. I'm really kind of, I felt the unity. I felt the ummah coming together. But that's a very short-term feeling that it will go away once I go back to my home, or once I go back to my community, or once I go back to my street, But if you change, if you get something, if you do something with your hand, for example, so remove something from the street, or help, but negotiate a zebra crossing outside of your school, that's your tongue is doing that, But if I can't, but at least in my heart, I'm angry about it. This is, to me, how I interpret that hadith, is that basically Allah is the all-powerful, but also gave us power. Allah is for Allah's name, Sami' al-Basir. Allah is all-hearing, sees everything, but also Allah gave us eyes and gave us tongues and, to do something with it. And all of this will be our witness, inshallah, on the Day of Judgment. So how do I spend my time, in this earth, is something that I thinking about it more and more, as we get a bit older, as we have children, as we live in the Western world. And how can we, as Muslims, rather than take the back seat of any issues that come and any kind of decisions be made, and on about us, how can we from that back seat take a front seat and say, no, actually we don't want this, and we actually have a plan to change it, or we have an alternative to change it, rather than just going out and shout about it. I know I'm saying maybe some things that people might not agree with, and that's absolutely fine. At the end of the day, it's just an argument I'm making, that by coming together as communities, as ummah, as united as possible, to get some changes to the people we're living among them, to the people who you might see every day on the street, but you never know what is happening behind closed doors. Unless that pain is shared in a public way, unless we are convinced that we have power within ourselves to do some changes in our communities, in our places of worship, in our schools, in our universities, this will be the only way I can see to do some change, and long-lasting change. But also, while we're doing this change, we're going on a journey of building, ourselves, developing ourselves, knowing how we can actually approach the politicians we've elected, knowing how we want to build that working relationship with them, and how can this actually be beneficial to our communities, to our neighborhoods. And inshallah, when at 12:30, I will have a colleague of mine who is working in Birmingham, who will share more details and more stories about changes that happened within the Muslim community over there, as part of that theme of building power, and how once those people thought more consciously about the word power, wrestled with it a bit, but also came into peace with the world, with the term, and made benefit of that word, of that term, and worked with that term basically to win changes to the people that they're living alongside them. So again, please, if you've got any pushback, if you've got any different intake on the word power, please call in 01902 972 150. The WhatsApp messages could be sent on 07440 420 432. So, in the theme of working on the word power and trying to unpack this term. I also want to tell you a bit more about the work we are doing in Wolverhampton and the kind of concept or the vision of power we're trying to build here. So as I quickly mentioned in the first half, is that I work with the migration justice team in the West Midlands, looking at how can we bring changes to the immigration system. I also told a bit about my story, being somebody who been through the asylum process, 8 years until I got my leave to remain. But that wasn't the end of my dealings with the Home Office. If you are a migrant yourself and you still have, a case with the Home Office, you know what I'm talking about. So the Home Office have put me on something called the 10-year route to become citizen, which means that from the moment you receive your leave to remain until the end of that 10-year route, you're basically renewing your visa every 2.5 years, paying at least, because it increases every year. So at the moment, you pay around 2,500 every 3 years, every 2.5 years, to renew your visa until that 10-year route ends. And by the 10-year route, by the end of that 10-year route, you have to apply to what's so-called indefinite leave to remain, which costs, again, around £2,800. And then you've got your citizenship fee, and it stands at the moment at £1,600. So a family of four could spend if they are on the 10-year route, they could be spending over £50,000 just to be in this country, and to while they're already living, paying taxes, part of the society. And also bearing in mind that some of them actually have their children born and raised here, so have no other home than the UK. And these kind of stories we've been hearing from people across the country, and I've been hearing this from people I know in Wolverhampton, people who, again, could be praying next to you in a Friday prayer, that this is what they're going through. This has put so much pressure on their lives, putting so much pressure financially, mentally, because of that, amount of money they have to pay, but also that idea that they will never be considered citizens until they go through this long process, very expensive process. So doing the listening, doing those kind of one-to-one conversations, having those people coming and sharing their stories, and sharing and making that pain public, and saying, yes, I'm going through this. Again, I'm not here to provide any immigration advice or this is not my my role. If you want people to help you with your immigration case, you know where to go. But if you're angry about why are you in that place, then I am here to listen to you, and I'm here to think about the strategy and how we're going to work to bring that into change. So the work we're doing has been across a number of organizations in Wolverhampton, where we've done what we call the house meetings, which is the listening to people's experience. So we've done really good listening at some churches around Wolverhampton. Really recently with them at the Park Village Education Centre, just around the corner from here, where we've listened to people's also experiencing making this country their home. And the next step with thinking about it is, let's write to our MP, local MP, and get them on board, tell them those stories, and tell them how it means and how it feels to be a migrant in this country. And this is, again, how we're thinking about building power among ourselves, is by coming together and thinking about, this is the plan we want to take. And by us saying that we want to reach out to our MP, talk to them about the problem that we've got, and think with them about what a solution we can bring. What could my MP do to make my life a bit better in the UK? So this is how we're building power. We're kind of organizing this, doing this community organizing with a number of with different people from across across the country. But I'm gonna talk more specifically about the West Midlands and Wolverhampton. And we've been doing this across different communities, And if I go back to what we've discussed in the beginning about the word ummah, in Islam, ummah is people who it's regardless of where you come from, your color, your ethnicity, your race. Islam goes all beyond all of this, and of course the verse in the Quran where it says that we created you from tribes and from people to get to know each other. Also the hadith, لا فرق بين عربي وأعجمي, there's no or أبيض أو أسود إلا بالتقوى. There's no difference between an Arab and non-Arab, black or white. All of you are the same under Allah, and as long as you've got, you're then judged by your taqwa to Allah. And sorry, I don't know the translation for the word taqwa. So the righteous, basically, in Allah's and your relationship with Allah, basically. So there's no difference, and this is the ummah. This is the definition of ummah. And yeah, so this is what we're doing. We're organizing within those communities. We've got people from, the Asian community that we've been doing listening with. We also have got people from the Black community, the African communities, the Caribbean communities, the Arab communities. We had so many kind of listening with the people, our brothers and sisters who've resettled in this country from Syria and from Iraq and came here. So this is how the Ummah is working in Wolverhampton, and this is how the people in Wolverhampton are thinking about how they want to make changes and long-lasting changes to their situation. I could give you a parcel today. I could feed you today, but I want to teach you how to fish, basically. This is where I'm coming from. I could again address the problem that we've got now instantly and feel good about it. Go back home and alhamdulillah, I've done my bit. But the whole definition of and the whole concept of the ummah, in my opinion, is that I want to know what is the pain and what is the suffering of that ummah, and how can I, because not it's just me, but how can we plan something to change that pain and change that suffering for the ummah. And this is community organizing, I hope, from an Islamic perspective. In the coming weeks, we will have, inshallah, with us guests who are doing some community organizing in their organizations, and they will have an intake on how we're doing this from an Islamic perspective. And then again, thinking about the scripture and thinking about what we've been learning since we're like children about Islam, about the role of Islam in our lives, and how Islam is not separated from our political and public lives. It's not just that we worship in a mosque and we leave the premises. I really want to know what is the sister next to me, is going through. Not because I'm nosy, but because I want to know more about how we as an ummah come together for that sister and help and support and win changes for her and her families, and change the conditions of what they're living. I hope that is provided a better explanation. Again, if you've got any questions, if you've got any comments, please keep them coming. I'm happy to answer them. But I'm hoping that also in the coming weeks we'll still be wrestling with those terms, power and social justice in Islam, women in leadership in Islam, all of these kind of things that we've been perhaps thinking about, not like talking about in more of a public way. We could have this in here in the show, Rise and Organize. We're gonna go on a break in very shortly, and once we come back, I will be delighted to have my colleague Said from Birmingham Citizens joining us over the phone. Yeah, yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Rise and Organize with me, Minna. We've just for people who've just joining us, we've talked about um, power in Islam. What do we mean by the word power from a community organizing perspective, and also what do we and what is the meaning of the ummah? Now I have a colleague of mine who is going to join us through the phone, I believe. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
Brother Said, you are live on Ramadan Radio Wolverhampton. Glad to have you with
mashallah,
us.
that's wonderful.
Yes. So, brother, we were talking in today's episode about power in Islam, like building power within different communities, doing listening, the concept of ummah in Islam, and would like to know more about from you, please, about Birmingham citizens, but also about the concept of ummah to you, the word power. What does it mean to you? But if we start let's start with basics. So please introduce yourself to listeners.
Okay, so my name is Saeed al-Haq Saeed. As everyone can tell, my name Saeed repeats itself twice. I'm a community organizer, like your good self, Sister Minna, with a national charity called Citizens UK. But I work here in the West Midlands. I supervise our work that we do in Birmingham and working with you in the Black Country. And community organising is really about justice. It's around working with lots of different people from different backgrounds, where we align our work so that we're focused on winning change for our communities. We do politics, but it's not party politics. We don't give back out to any political party. But what we are involved in is like what happens for the benefit of the common good.
Thank you for this. Thank you for the explanation. I did touch a bit on politics and the power that we're interested in building to win changes for the people in our communities and neighborhoods. But I would like to know more about what is your intake of the word power?
Well, for a lot of people, and power might feel like a bad word, and that is when people think about power. They're thinking about power over someone else, being told what to do. But for me, power really is about acknowledging and recognizing people for their worth, and giving them respect and dignity for their own views and their own aspirations and hopes and experiences. So for me, the word power is so important, because a lot of our communities, that we work with actually feel powerless. So they're struggling, they have difficulties, whether it's paying the bills, getting by, they see news on the TV, from war to conflict to, natural disasters to famine, and actually feeling powerless. And so anything that we do that helps people feel as in, they have some agency and take some charge, I think it's a really good thing. Otherwise, we have lots of cynicism. We have people who are able to get us to think about things and view the world as completely against us.
Yes, I think I totally agree with you in what you've said, but also I would like to know more about from how you perceive the word power, but also from Islamic perspective. I want to know more about how Muslims, how people like us who are decision being made about them, but not with them, and not with them being in the room, and how can we pretty much try to change this and get Muslims into the front seat of change?
So I just think there's perhaps a few steps back we can take. So firstly, just to clarify, I'm not an alim. My father is retired. He's a muhaddith, and so I won't be able to share based on the sources of Quran and Hadith, which I'm sure is familiar with quite a few people. So, but I'm not gonna pretend to be an alim. However, I think on a basic sense, for us Muslims, we have a huge amount. The common things that we all know, we have duties and responsibilities. So we have duties to our neighbours. You know, our immediate neighbours, as we all know, have more rights over us than some of our relatives. And so where we live here in the UK, and whether it's in Birmingham, Wolverhampton, anywhere else your listeners are listening in, you know, the neighbour to your, not just your immediate right and left, we're talking, what was it, 40 doors?
Mm-hmm.
That's an entire street have more rights over you than my relative in Bangladesh, for instance. So for that, it's so important that, you know, we're able to take charge. Right now, as it's Ramadan, some of us on our street, we don't kind of have to cook. The amount of food that's sent round, you know, is amazing. And we take care of our neighbours, including neighbours who might not be Muslim, you know, we're sharing. But, you know, one thing that's important is, you know, how do we, these amazing habits that we have during Ramadan, you know, which are thinking about others and thinking about justice. And, you know, we do so many donations. People are doing amazing work here in the UK, not just abroad. But how does that not stop, you know, after Ramadan finishes? One of my neighbours once said, Saeed, I look forward to Ramadan because, you know, all of our neighbours are kind of sharing food, but, like, you know, when kind of Ramadan finishes, I just miss it. And what I think is indirectly saying is, like, you know, how do we as Muslims, you know, see our habit for justice and others as something we do all year round, not just something we do particularly during Ramadan. But ultimately, I think as Muslims, you know, we have further responsibilities. So not just to our neighbours, but also, you know, if we see an injustice, if someone shares with you that they're struggling or they're having difficulties, you know, what can we do to assist and help them? And mashallah, we have masajids, we have community centres, we have even social enterprises that are led by and run by Muslims, who should be geared up towards, you know, helping people and making some change happen. So I think there's a huge opportunity, and there are people doing so much out and about across our region. But I think during Ramadan and beyond Ramadan, we have the tools, particularly as, you know, as people are fasting, as people are being more conscious. You know, Ramadan is about taqwa. Ramadan isn't just about charity. Charity is one of the things you do to build taqwa. Taqwa is our God consciousness. So how does all of that fit in to a sense of justice and, you know, real connection for others beyond these important days and nights?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. How can we make whatever we're doing in Ramadan is an action that it's happening all over the year, not just Ramadan. And I remember you've shared with me last year, was it? I'll say, when you talked how Ramadan for you, as somebody who's as a community organizer, as a spiritual break, as a way of like recharging for the year ahead, and how this has helped you in your work that you're doing. If you just really quickly touch on the work you're doing in Birmingham, and also the organization and the kind of organizations you're working with.
So we've been running campaigns, mashallah. So we've been running campaigns on youth mental health. So there used to be a gap. For any of your listeners who might be familiar, you know, children's services finishes at 16 and adults started at 25. And we campaigned in Birmingham definitely to get that that no man's land in the middle, fixed so that there is proper transition. So we've done a number of campaigns. Many years ago, we were involved in the resettlement of the Syrian refugees campaign. And currently, mashallah, there are loads of groups, mostly non-Muslim groups. Unfortunately, we don't have enough Muslim groups yet stepping up, but there's a huge invitation for you who are working on resettling Afghan families. There's many Afghan families in temporary homeless accommodation, whether it's in Pakistan or elsewhere in the Gulf, or even here in the UK. Who are looking for people to help sponsor them, as in not with money, but support them to find a community to live in. So there's a range of campaigns and projects we're doing, and then the big one, across the region is working with young people and to persuade the mayor of the West Midlands, along with local councils and others, on a jobs compact. And what that is in a few months' time, a lot of young people who finish college or exams are going to have a whole summer where they would really be keen to get in some work experience, and working with the mayor and his team about what can that look like, how can we arrange so that there is support and appropriate placement. So alhamdulillah, we have a number of regular campaigns, housing being one of them. 9,000 out of 12,000 homeless children in the city who are in temporary accommodation, in the region, are in Birmingham. So what can be done differently to support and change things for those families? So we have a lot, but one thing I would, if I could, to your listeners and all the folks tuning in, next Wednesday night, 5:45, because the start is going to be about just 2 minutes after 6. We are holding a community iftar. So Birmingham Newman University are hosting an iftar, all invited. So if you're nearby, come to Birmingham Newman University in Bartley Green. Come at 5:45. Or if you come online, you'll see the links to register. And we'd like you to share with others, and particularly in a part of the city, South Birmingham, where there's very few Muslim neighbours and they don't really have community iftars. As we all know, there's loads of them in the inner city, in Wolverhampton, in Birmingham, and different places. But in certain communities, that doesn't happen as often. And so any of your viewers and listeners who are able to participate, they can come and meet us and meet the wonderful people that are involved from different communities. It's amazing, mashallah, that a Catholic university is hosting an iftar to allow Muslims to break their fast, with other communities with very little kind of logistics and headache worry for us to go there, break the iftar, pray salah, and meet others and enjoy a meal, and really reinforce what's been happening in our region, is that we need to collectively fight against hate. As a lot your listeners and others might be aware from previous programs, there's been a large rise in anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia in our part of the world, and we need to really focus on what is going to help people to ally against that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. I really want to go back to something you've just talked about. Is you've talked about the variety of people who are involved in this, but you've said we don't have as much as Muslims doing the work or being part of the campaign. I would like to know more about why do you think this is the case, and how can we, as both Muslims living in the West Midlands and living within our in our communities and neighbourhoods, how can we perhaps start to change that?
I think the first is to really sit in your community. So whether it's whatever town and city you're in, or wherever local area and ward you're in, and just pause and reflect and think about, especially for those brothers and sisters who have some kind of responsibility. So you might be in charge, or you might volunteer, you're on the committee of a masjid or a community organization, or even a business, and start to really think like, what is it what does change look like? And we saw last summer that there was a reaction, particularly a reaction to during the elections, party politics, and lots of people in the Muslim community felt like, they had spent quite a lot of time on party politics over the years, and things weren't really changing, whether it's internationally about the war on Gaza, but also more regionally about, if you look at child poverty in places like Birmingham and others. And I think the importance is, there's some really good work going on. Lots of people do huge amount of wonderful charity work, whether it's feeding the homeless, whether it's, community activities. But how do we move to actual change that leads to something that's systematic? And for some people, they go into politics, and that's really important, because then they will have decision-making power about the laws and the rules that govern us. For us in community organizing, we do not seek elected office, so we're not talking to anyone saying, come and vote for us. What we're saying is there is a method. There is a method that comes from many, many years of civil rights, where Muslims and non-Muslims and others and have allied with each other to win things for their communities. And there's, we stand on the shoulders of giants even in this region, like many, many people before us in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so what we're inviting all your listeners to do is find out about community organizing. Mm-hmm. Inshallah, in the next few months, we'll be putting lots of opportunities for people to find out. We have a brilliant website, citizensuk.org, which sets out what that looks like. Find out and learn about it. You can be a school, you can be a masjid, you can be any organization, and learn about it, and then put it into practice. And put it into practice means, really working out, if there is something that I care about in my community, what is it that is going to change things? What is it that's going to happen? So we have, mashallah, some amazing work by a masjid in where I live in Birmingham, in Lozells, who every Saturday morning there's young people who come out and do litter pick from the masjid, which is wonderful, trying to keep the area clean and so forth. But one thing that's significant, and I'm just using that as an example because Saida Varga mentioned litter picks in her book recently, is, if you look at, there isn't a warden in our area, there isn't an environmental warden, and people who do dump rubbish, kind of get away with it, and as a result, there is no deterrent. So, what needs to happen about speaking to councillors about it? And there are other kind of examples where, you can be a bit more organised, where you can work out things that people can do with resources from the local council and others. But you don't need to. My experience over 20 years is there are, for some, party politics as a route, but there are others like me. And we think if I team up with the local church and the school and the community group and the women's charity and others where I live, then we actually can get quite a lot of stuff done and get the politicians and decision makers to take it seriously. And that is what we're encouraging people who are listening to this program to think more about. What is it we can do that is going to change things, not just, make things a bit better for the people who walk through the door?
Yes, thank you for that. I mean, I've shared a bit about earlier in the program where I said I could feed you today, I could bring a parcel, but I want to teach you how to fish, basically. And I think this is summarized what community organizing is. But with the help or with the support of an organizer, how can we make sure that we're listening to our communities, but also winning some changes to them, long-lasting changes, systematic changes, as you've mentioned. Thank you for that. We've got a few minutes left. I want you to end with two things, please. Okay. Yes, please. Two things, please. So, one message I want you to send to the Ummah during the month of Ramadan.
So what message I think we should all be aware and clear that, the purpose, and I start with myself, of Ramadan is to build taqwa. And there's some amazing kind of teaching and learning about taqwa that we can learn from the ulama that comes from the Quran and Hadith. But ultimately, that word consciousness is really, really important. So the whole reason why we fast and we give up loads of things which in other times would be halal is, to get us back to, our core. And, we're all really busy and leading busy lives. And so, what is it that kind of builds our consciousness? And our consciousness isn't about how efficiently I can donate on just giving to something that I see an ad on the telly, or, am I just giving food to my neighbors? How do we build the consciousness about our habits? And do these habits mean that, we carry them for the next 11, 12 months? So yeah, my thing is, Ramadan is a spiritual leadership development month, retreat, as you can describe it. So, as we're thinking about the Ashura, how we're also thinking, can people see a difference in us? So I don't need to sound preachy, but if that's been our goal and an aim, like, does that change us? And so, inshallah, I hope it does, and that makes it easy for all of us.
Inshallah, Allahumma ameen. Lastly, one dua for the ummah.
One
dua for the ummah, or for
one dua
and the wider community.
I think, of course, we want to attain Jannah and Maghfirah. That should be first, and of course, we start off with Durood and Salam for Rasulullah. And we start off doing a dua for all of the ummah, wherever they are across the world, from different countries, struggling, the oppressed, to those who are starving. But ultimately, I think the dua that is important for me is, Allah accepts our Ramadan, Allah accepts our niyyah, but also Allah, develops a change in me that actually is going to be beneficial to me and everyone else around me. So, that's inshallah, Allah make it easy for us. Ameen.
Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Brother Saeed, thank you very much. Jazakallah khair for joining us today. And looking forward to more change and winning justice, inshallah, for our communities in the coming months. Thanks a lot, brother.
For having me. Jazakallah khair.
Thanks a lot.
Salam.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, everybody who've joined us today. I hope that you find today's episode useful, inspirational, a bit spiritual as well. We've covered a topic that might not sit really well with people, talking about power and how can we build power to change communities and win justice for the people in our community. If you've got anything that you want to share, please do text us on WhatsApp. I will be here, inshallah, next Thursday with a new guest and a new topic we'll be discussing and wrestling with. So please do come and share your thoughts. I wish you, inshallah, a blessed iftar, a yummy iftar, and I'll see you, inshallah, next time.